Hello there, welcome to another episode of Trust Builders. Today I have with me the one and only Cary Weston. He is the president and chief marketing officer of a agency called Sutherland Weston Marketing Communication, but he is also a fellow They Ask You Answer coach. In addition to all of those roles, he is the host of the podcast, the Chat GPT Experiment, where he helps people like you and I to understand how to use ChatGPT in our daily lives to help us do marketing and sales tasks more efficiently and all around improve our lives using ChatGPT. I can't wait. We have so much in this episode. Let's dive right in. Hi, Carrie. Welcome to the show. I am thrilled that you're here today.
Hi, Hannah. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. When so you and I have known each other for actually quite a while, like last 2 years or so, and I'm really thrilled that you are joining me today on Trust Builders. You're actually one of the reasons that I started this podcast,
Oh,
because my first podcast interview was on your podcast, the Chat GTP Experiment.
yeah. Yeah, I was honored to have you. You did a great job, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I've been following you. You're doing a great job, so keep it up.
Oh, thank you. So let's just start right there. You started the podcast in October 2023. You talked to super smart minds, Marcus Sheridan, Chris Borean. You talked to a whole bunch of like super smart people. Give us sort of an idea of where were people at when you started with their mindset around AI and ChatGPT, and then we'll take it into the future. But let's start off, where were they at in October 2023?
Yeah, so I actually have a good story for that. I started getting interested in this early in 2023. Obviously, when it all rolled out late in 2022, very little people actually knew what it was. But someone did a demo for me around Christmas, and it piqued my interest to a point where I'm a curious individual and I just need to get my hands dirty. So I did. And I started playing with it internally. I started using it for my own work. I started teaching it inside my agency. And then I decided that it's time for me to have conversations with clients. And at that point, I realized that not only was there a great unawareness, if you will, a lack of awareness, but a tremendous amount of skepticism. And so I started teaching the basics, if you will, and the basics just turned into, if I'm going to do it on a small scale, let me just record it and see if it has any value to anybody. So in October of 23, we put on an annual marketing conference called Mainstay. I'm in Bangor, Maine, here in the US, and we have a marketing conference every October. And my keynote for that address was on ChatGPT. Now, at that point, I had been neck deep into this thing for 9 months. Was very excited, was using it on a regular basis, saw some tremendous benefits both for the work that I was doing and the work I was doing for clients. And we had about 200 people in the room for that keynote. And I got glazed eyes. Like I was giving them three really practical and tactical takeaways. I gave a case study on how they could use it to optimize their site and get message. I was giving them some really good stuff and I was just getting glazed eyes because in October of 23, nobody in the room knew what I was talking about. Nobody knew what I was talking about. And I said, okay, so I'm a little far ahead of the masses here. So I've got to back it up. And that's where the podcast came from, was just going back to the basic. Those folks that you've talked about, I've had the opportunity to talk to a number of folks that have a very wide range of experiences, both in conversing with, using themselves, and talking to folks around business and Chat GPT. And the answer I usually ask them is, when you speak to large groups or when you're speaking to people in general, what are you seeing? And the trend is changing a little bit now, but all in all, it's not far removed from where it was in October 23, which is the average person. If you're not in marketing, if you're not in tech, the average person still has maybe a little bit more understanding of what it is. But most people that I meet are aware of it, which is moving the needle a little. They've dabbled a little bit. Most of them have used it like Google and they don't like what they get and they don't understand it, so they back away from it. A lot of people have a single experience that they didn't see any value in and then just said, nah, it's not worth my time. So I would say at this point, Hannah, for every 100 people I meet, I would say maybe 15 are comfortable in maybe using it. I would say 15 to 20 have no idea what it is still. And then that 65% of the people are just comfortably curious, but not really familiar with how to use it or what it's for. They know it's there. They hear people raving about it, but they don't know that it's for them and they don't know how to apply it to the stuff that they do on a daily basis.
And that's business people we're talking about. That's not your grandma down the road.
Correct. That is business owners, business managers, folks that have probably a keen interest in efficiency and proficiency that could benefit greatly from learning one or two things on how this could apply. But quite frankly, many folks are already juggling nine different balls, trying to put out fires on a regular basis, lucky to keep the light bill paid, and see this as a toy, a hobby that they'll do on the side rather than a necessity for business. And I think that's the opportunity, is getting people to recognize the absolute necessity of how valuable this can be for businesses of all sizes.
Yeah, when I just look at my husband, he tried it in October 2023, I think also around that time frame. Had ChatGPT write a funny gnome poem, and that was it. And then until recently, where he really said, I'm gonna take a picture with my phone, send it to ChatGPT, and ask it about the tire pressure if I explain this car sticker to me. And he was blown away. And since then, he's actually using it for very different reasons or different scenarios than we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the actual development and the quality of ChatGPT used to use when you like 3.5 when you started, now with 4.0, it's a very different animal. So I would love to just dive into when you do talk to businesses and you do see people using it, brownie points if it's in a they ask you answer scenario, but in marketing, what do people use it, or if they aren't using it but they're listening to this, that they should really think about using it that way?
So the first thing I tell people is you don't have to learn the software. Don't be overwhelmed by trying to figure it all out at once. It's not Photoshop, it's not Illustrator, it's not QuickBooks, it's not software that you have to master. It's really a digital assistant. It's like having an intern that is ready to help with small tasks, everyday tasks, whatnot. Although it could get far as complex as you want to make it. But the more complex you try to introduce the concept to, the more confusion and anxiety it creates. So the first thing I say is it's there for you. And if you want to know if it can help you, simply ask it. And that's where most people just look at me and say, "What are you talking about?" Because they're used to they're used to using a computer, right? They're used to being the brain and then having the task be done in the computer. Where what's happening with ChatGPT is you can literally talk to it in a conversational way and it will relate to the conversation that you're having. And that's where most people go, "Oh, I didn't know that." So the first thing I would say to anyone listening, Hannah, if they are on the curious but unsure kind of level, is just open chat and say, "This is what I do. This is my position. This might be the industry I'm in or the business I have. How can you help me?" That one sentence will get a response from ChatGPT, and they'll be very surprised to see what comes back. And then here comes my three favorite words. The most powerful words I tell people with ChatGPT is once you do that, it's going to give you a list of a few things or maybe 10 things that it can do. It's going to say, "Sure, I understand what your position is and what you might be doing. Here's 10 ways I can probably help you." Just take one of those 10 and just say these three words. Tell me more. Okay. So let's say it gives you a list of 10 things and you're interested in number seven. Just say, "Tell me more about number seven." And it is going to say, "Sure." And then give you more details. So the exercise that I think you were in Chicago when we did this, the exercise that I share with people is when I'm talking to a crowd is raise your hand. And everyone raises their hand. And I say, "Okay, now raise it higher." And everyone raises it higher. And then I say, "Why didn't you raise it that high the first time?" And they say, "Because I didn't know I needed full energy there, or I was being lazy or just doing enough to get by." So chat does the same thing. So when you ask it a question, it gives you that basic answer. And then it's waiting for you to tell it what to focus more on. Because if you can think about the data set that it's dealing with, it does really great with context. So it understands the nature of your question, it understands the nature of your needs, but it gives you just enough to fulfill your request. And then it waits for you to say, I want more. And those three words, tell me more, opens up an entire world to people that they didn't see before because most people stop with the response that they get. So tell me more is the secret phrase. So ask it how it can help the position that you're doing, the job that you have, and then ask it to dig a little deeper. And I think a lot of your listeners will be surprised at what they find.
Those are very magic words, that's for sure. If we just look at marketing, let's just start with marketing. How have you seen people use ChatGPT in very practical scenarios? A lot of times people have this blank canvas or blank page fear of the cursor blinking and they don't know where to start. This tell me more is great, and the tip that you just gave is enormously helpful. But I'm sure you've seen really cool creative uses and very impactful uses of using ChatGPT in marketing. What are some of those examples?
Yeah. So in no particular order, here's what I'm finding myself using, clients using, and other people telling me that they're doing. First thing is in creating social media posts. So, giving it context of telling ChatGPT what your goal is. Three things: what your goal is, what success looks like, what your business is, and who your audience is. So those three things, if you can feed it that, and literally just say, "Hey, listen, I want to create some social media posts," and this is how I would address it. I would say, "Hey, Chat, I've named mine Bud," so I say, "Hey, Bud, I need some help." And this is literally, I'm gonna share with your listeners literally how I would talk to it. Hey, Bud, I need some help. I am a sports memorabilia company. I sell autographed helmets to football fanatics. I want to make some posts on Facebook, and my goal is to get more engagement to my private Facebook group. I want to show them that I have something of value, and I want them to join the Facebook group so we can talk, do auctions, and sell things on my product. Can you help me out? And then it's going to say, yep, let's go. And it's going to ask me a few questions, right? And it's going to say, what is it specifically that you want to share? What are you doing? Are there any nuggets of details that you want? And then it's going to come back and it's going to say probably something like, here's a post. And you're going to go, great. I want to post for LinkedIn. I want to post for Facebook. I want to post for Instagram. And I want them to be a little bit different. Okay, great. Boom, boom. Here's the three posts. So something like that, just talking to it. But just like that intern phrase that I told you about, don't assume that it knows, what you want unless you tell it. So the more details and specific you give it, right, the better off the response and the value of using it is going to be. So social media, Hannah, is probably a very easy and low bar to start using ChatGPT for. So let's go to a second one, messaging. Okay. So StoryBrand, Donna Mills' StoryBrand is a framework that actually goes very well with They Ask You Answer. So Marcus and Don have worked together before, but I use They Ask You Answer as a framework and I use StoryBrand as a framework. StoryBrand is very good at creating messaging that is customer focused, customer centric, and helping businesses define what they do and the value they provide through the eyes of solving a problem for their customers. And so ChatGPT knows what They Ask You Answer is, that ChatGPT knows what StoryBrand is. And so, in creating messaging for websites, for instance, let's say you want to revamp your homepage messaging or you're just creating a site from the beginning, you can say, hey, bud, I need some help creating language for my homepage. I would like to use Donald Miller's story brand framework. This is my business. This is what I do. These are the customers that I served. Can you help me? Okay. And it's going to go into its data set and it's going to say, I know what story brand is. I know that we need a headline that answers a question and a problem. And then it's going to go right through the thing. And then it's going to come out and go, how's this? And again, it's going to always try to help you. It may ask a few questions, but it's always trying to help you. So it's going to give you a draft. And then you can just, again, just like you would with an intern, great start. And Hannah, I always am nice to it. I always say please and thank you because the robots are going to rule the world someday and I want to be on their good side. And
That's
so what
exactly what my daughter says all the time. She's because I'm teaching them right to use artificial intelligence, even though the school totally condemns it. But she's you always got to be nice because they're going to be ruling the future.
You never know, right? And so getting that first draft, right? Just getting the basics out of your head and letting chat do the first draft. And then you can say, okay, give me three more options for that headline, or give me four more options for that sub headline, or whatever it might be, right? Again, the tell me more, do more, revise. is another thing. So social media, website messaging. Now here's the third one, and we'll leave it at that. The third one is really cool. So if you're creating content, okay, so if any of your listeners are content creators, being website messaging, articles, emails, it doesn't matter. Sometimes they probably struggle with what to say. Like I said, that blinking cursor is very scary. Hey, bud, can you help me write an article? The topic, here's my goal, here's my company, here's my audience, right? Right. And then go from there. Or, and I know you've done this before too, if you record your sales calls, if you record a call, or just record yourself, right? I've written articles before where I just talk to Chat GPT. So there's a way in which you can use the voice option and just literally brain dump your ideas or whatever it is to it. But if you have a transcription, if you have a video, you can use the transcription or you can just talk to chat. Most people talk differently than they type, and they talk faster and more thorough than they type. And so if you record yourself, all of your thoughts, and they don't have to be in any logical order whatsoever, you just get stuff out of your head. Or if you've already done that in a video and you have a transcription, or if you have a sales call, that has really good content for an article, you can feed that file, that transcription to ChatGPT and use that as the content and say, hey, listen, I want to write this article. I have a transcription that I want you to use as the context of my article. I'm going to give it to you. Here's my audience. Here's my goal. Let's go. And again, it'll give you a draft. And that's what it is. It's a draft. And it gets you from zero, that blinking cursor, to maybe 75% in a very comfortable and efficient manner. And then you tweak it to make it sound the way you want to sound. So those are three ways I think social media, writing content, and messaging, I think are pretty standard in which people can see value and how ChatGPT could help them in their marketing efforts.
Yeah, lots of follow-up questions, but I'm going to limit it to two for this. You mentioned you can upload sales calls, and one of the questions that I have a lot, where people seem to have a very big fear around, is uploading a sales call and chat having access to that sort of maybe sensitive information.
Mhm.
How much, or what would your response be in terms of how much people have to be concerned that chat is training, or OpenAI is training the model on their data, or that this kind of sensitive data is being surfaced to anywhere else in the world?
Yeah. So OpenAI, which is the company that owns and creates ChatGPT, is just as interested in security as every other data company, Microsoft, Apple, and whatnot. And so there's more tools now than ever before to share with them that you don't want whatever you're giving to be part of the larger database. So in your settings now, you can actually share that you don't want this to go beyond the session that you have. So the data that you're providing will stay with you and then be deleted at the end. That being said, I don't trust tech in general, right? I would say if you have super secret information, if you have sensitive information, it might be good to maybe scrub that transcript before you put it up there because you can't load the at the moment. And this could change by the time this video goes live, because things change so fast. But at the moment, you can't just upload the video to ChatGPT and say, transcribe this and then make it into an article. So you have to have the text file, right? So you've already created the transcript. I use Descript, and there's a number of other. In fact, if you simply upload a file to YouTube, whether it's yours or someone else's, by the way, I found out you can do this with other people's too. So if you find a video out there that you really, YouTube is creating transcripts for you, and you can grab transcripts of your videos or anyone else's, and there it turns into a text file. So what I would do is if you're super secret or if you're super sensitive or if there's something you really don't want, should it actually not stay locally and get deleted, just scrub that before you send it up. But to your point, as an aside, financial data, sensitive data, personal data, still, I wouldn't be uploading any of that to it. But it's not, it's practice, common practice, if you will, to anonymize the transcript. So take the client's name out and stuff like that, company X rather than the actual company name.
Yeah, like just use common sense. I used to work in for 10 years at SAP Global Marketing in the competitive intelligence unit.
Sure.
And our motto was always, you have to be able to read in tomorrow's paper what you're doing today. And that sort of has been like a guiding principle. Only upload the stuff that you're comfortable seeing in tomorrow's paper,
That's right.
kind of thing.
Yep,
Yeah.
and that's certainly changing, right? That threshold is certainly changing, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And the level of journalism certainly has changed, but that's a different story.
A podcast altogether, isn't it?
One other follow-up question though, in terms of writing content,
Yeah.
one thing that I always say to my clients is that if I can go to chat and say, just write me an article on how to sell baseball cards or how to tell the value of a baseball card, and I take that and copy it and put it on my website, it's not worth writing because anyone can do that. But in 6 months down the line, where do you see content, sort of the value of content being, given that we're using it a lot to help us write content, to help us edit content, etc.? Basically what I'm asking. Let me ask a better question. Is the value of content with AI completely diminishing in about 6 to 12 months?
No, and I don't think it's diminished now, and I don't think it's diminished in the future because I look at it as this lens. I don't see the tool being the writing agent for me. I see it
Mhm.
being a way in which my writing is done more efficiently. Okay, so there's a difference there. There's a difference between ordering up an article, right? And using a tool to make your article writing more efficient. Okay. So individual thought, human perspective, experience is always going to be valuable. And I think in the world in which things are getting to be easier and easier, the ability for you to show thought, experience, build trust and confidence is going to be more valuable. I think that's currency that is never going to go away. Now, how you do it may change. The tools, the efficiency, the speed, the process may change. But I think the more we decentralizability, the ability to do things faster, the more valuable perspective is going to be, the more valuable experience is going to be. Now, can you fire up ChatGPT and say, give me 1,000 word article on this topic and then copy and paste it? Absolutely. Would I want to read that and have any value? No. And what's very interesting is not only are humans recognizing that there's a lot of garbage out there, but the tools in which we're using to find information is recognizing that too. And so there's been some major updates recently through algorithms and the likes of Google and Bing, where the actual words don't matter as much as the value, the perspective, and the meaning of what's being written. Right. So they're actually recognizing carbon copywriting and not respecting it as much. So if I could share, you shared my podcast at the beginning, the Chat GPT Experiment. I have a few episodes where this topic is front and center. Episode 10 is literally titled How to Teach ChatGPT to Write Like Me. For this very reason, there are best practices. There are what I call attribute sets. There is a few homework assignments that if you do up front, it's one time effort and then repeat benefit over and over again. So do it once, benefit many, which will help you use ChatGPT to be more authentic, to be more real, utilize and scale the experience and point of view that you have so that it becomes a tool to accelerate what you know, what you say, and what you share, and not just creating generic content.
Now, we've talked a lot about marketing. I just quickly want to just make the point that ChatGPT can be extremely helpful also for salespeople in terms of role playing. You mentioned the voice function. And one very awesome way of using chat is to just use that voice function and role play certain scenarios. What are other ways that I can use chat if I'm a salesperson?
Okay. Again, in no particular order, and I don't have the number in my mind, so I'll just give you what comes top of mind. So the first thing I would do is pre-call research, right? So I've done this with potential sales calls. So if I know I'm calling company XYZ, I could literally tell chat, hey, bud, right? Because I've named mine Bud. You could name yours Blueberry or whatever you want to do. Hey, I am doing a sales call with XYZ. I would like to know what you can find out. Give me an executive memo on this company, right? Include recent news, any key personnel that you can find, announcements, messaging. Help me understand this company. Help me understand how I might align my value proposition to what they need and what they do. And then you'd be amazed, provided a URL or a company name or something like that. Literally tell it to use the web and use reputable resources to find information, and you'll get a really powerful executive memo that is extremely valuable when it comes to actually positioning yourself for a sales call. So that's number one. I've seen salespeople have tremendous value using that. Number two is recording your own sales calls, right? Not for the sake of creating content, but for the sake of doing what I call a recap memo, either for the client or for yourself. So loading that transcript into Chat GPT and then just say some version of give me an executive summary, include the highlights, key insights, any questions that were unanswered, by the way, any topics or to-dos that came up in the call, and have it create a memo so that you can get a quick recap of the call that you can do something with. So whether you share that with a client or not, it's a powerful way of getting information that's necessary for you to do something next. And here's why that's powerful, because many of us in sales struggle with taking notes, right? We wait to talk instead of listen, or we're distracted by taking notes. And if you can free yourself up by recording the call, just like we're doing now, Hannah, you can be more present, you can be more in the moment, and you can listen with purpose and ask more questions. So if you know that the call is being recorded, then the more details you can pull out of the prospect, the better your recap memo is going to be, which is the better the work you can do later. Instead of writing and trying to remember, I can listen and then say, tell me more, and get all knowing that it's being recorded, and then use that transcript to create a summary. So that's number two. And then number three, if there are documents, and I know there are, every salesperson has repeatable documents, you can actually teach ChatGPT to create these documents for you as long as you have the information. If you have a recap memo or a scope of work or a proposal, you can actually teach it by feeding it previous versions. Like, here's 5 examples of my scope of work document. Please analyze it and configure it because I want to work with you in the future to create more of these documents. Tell me what information you need and tell me what information needs to go where so I can best prepare on my sales calls, right? To get the information necessary into the transcript. So when I feed it to you, you know what to do with it. Now, think about that for a second. If you could just have the sales call be the hardest part from a time point of view, if that's the hardest part of your sales process, knowing that the transcript is now going to allow you to do other things, analysis, scope of work, recaps, proposals in an instant, then you have a problem solving partner on the sales team that's saving you hours and hours a week. And you're not losing information. You're actually being more prompt in responding. And I tell you from experience, if you can put together a recap memo that helps the prospect see that you heard them, right? And provide some insight into that conversation, then you are ahead of the game in terms of the competition that they're also talking to.
And you can copy that into your CRM and have it for next time as a note. Yeah, there's just so many different ways.
Yeah,
And you can even, if you have that transcript, upload it and ask Chat to give some suggestions of what you could have done better.
100%.
There's some
100%.
crazy opportunities there. So now we talked a lot about awesome ways to use it. But let's flip that coin around a bit. And we talked a little bit about security and concerns there. But if I am, now let me back up for 1 second. Ethan Malik a few days ago said something like implementing AI, and I'm totally paraphrasing this, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, but implementing AI is totally not like buying SaaS software. In the past, you waited, you looked what other people were doing, you bought the SaaS software once you were certain that's going to get you X amount of ROI, but you can't do that with AI. You have to start implementing it now, and you have to implement it in ways that is unique to your organization almost. There's some repeatable patterns. We just mentioned a bunch, but you really have to organically use it in your own organization. So if I want to do that, what can I do in terms of culture to, as a business leader, to encourage my employees to start embracing this? What do I have to do in terms of culture to get that going?
Yeah. So the phrase that came to mind while you were talking, Hannah, is the two best times to plant a shade tree was 20 years ago and today, right? And so it's the same thing here. You need to get in and do it in order to understand it. So I had Paul Raitzer and Mike Kaput do the Marketing AI Institute, and they
Mm-hmm.
have a podcast, the Marketing AI podcast. And Mike was on the show a couple weeks ago. And this is exactly what they're doing now is they are talking to teaching and creating frameworks for companies to bring AI into their organization. And it is all about culture, right? It's a culture of curiosity, but it's also a culture of knowing what to do and how to do it, but also being secure and consistent and being open. And so I would say that the best thing to do for your listeners is to check out, I think there's actually a free download or at least podcasts and whatnot. Mike and Paul at the Marketing AI Institute literally have a jumpstart kit and a template for companies that are looking to do just that. How do we implement AI into our organization? How do we create it as part of our culture? How do we create a framework, a checklist? And he spoke to it. I think it's episode 41 on my podcast, which is Mike. He spoke to it very specifically, and I know they have a number of tools and guidelines just for that on their own too. So there's plenty of help out there for folks that are looking it in. But my answer is always be curious and be cautious at the same time. But this is not a top down. This is not leadership telling people what to do. Empowering people to find, and this is the nugget I would leave you with. Again, don't try to learn the software. Don't try to learn a program. Find one thing in your day. Just find one thing in your day that you repeat over and over again and see if you can have ChatGPT help you with it to become faster and more efficient. And then you're going to get value out of that. If you can do that once, you can do it twice. And if you think about this, if you empower each of your employees in your company to do that, to find one thing, they can become more efficient and more scalable using chat, then your business constantly is improving, becoming more curious, and you're implementing small steps to make big changes into your company from an AI point of view.
Yeah, I saw actually, that's a really good point. I saw them also post a graphic where it had four circles. I'm going to put it in the research notes, but if it's like repetitive, if it's data driven, like sort of four criteria that help you identify what is a good use case for AI there.
Yeah.
So, in terms of though ethics, you said it's not a top-down approach, and as a manager, I can't tell my employees what to do. On the other hand, you can let them run wild and have no control over what your employees are doing with AI. As an organization, my employees are using AI ethically and within guideline. I have to have guidelines first. Where are we at with that?
So most business owners that think that they can control their client or their employees' use of AI or chat would be surprised to know that they're already doing it anyway. And so open lines of communication, creating an internal discussion, maybe creating a committee, creating some best practices, standards of use, the do's and don'ts, just like we have with business. AI is no different than actually talking to people on a regular basis. There are things that we can do and we can't do. There's ethical and moral decisions we make every day, whether we recognize them or not, and AI is just another layer to that. But keeping it quiet, right? And playing the ostrich game of if we don't talk about it, it won't happen is absolutely not going to play here. So my answer to that question in various forms in it is be open about it, talk about it, exchange ideas, share how you're using it, share challenges and ideas that you think would help the company, and just cautious of how you're controlling it, but also be mindful of what is and what is not good uses of it inside company, especially with company products and information, right?
Last question before we get to the wrapping up segment is we can very quickly use AI to destroy trust, right? It's very easily done if we don't have guidelines in place or if we're putting out just garbage content that is created by AI and we don't look at it. But this podcast is called Trust Builders on Purpose because the discussions we're having here are really all about building the trust. How can I use AI to really help me build trust with my buyers and my customers?
So the answer for me is very simple and it's over your left shoulder. So following the practices of they ask you answer and thinking about the customer first, right? So again, I shared earlier that ChatGPT specifically, and whether you're using Claude or whether you're using something out there, I teach best practices for using a tool like ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an app. It just happens to be probably the world's most popular version of this learning model, but there are others. And so the lessons that I teach for ChatGPT are applicable to other learning models like Claude and whatnot. But the framework is known. So they ask you answer is probably the most powerful and logical common sense tool for thinking about the customer in a marketing point of view and building trust, as you and I know, by being open, authentic, honest, and objective in how we're delivering information. I mentioned the episode 10. Marcus was on the podcast, and then we did a couple other They Ask You Answer episodes. But episode 10, teaching ChatGPT how to write like you, takes the consideration of They Ask You Answer into the fray there. But to answer your question directly, the ability for you to teach ChatGPT how to write like you and then use buyers' questions, buyers' concerns, buyers' anxieties, buyers' needs in delivering your experience, your expertise, your valuable information in their point of view is a terrific combination. So the framework and the tool, as long as you do, again, that homework, do it once and benefit over and over again without doing the same amount of work. As long as you do the homework that I lay out and you create these attribute sets of really allowing ChatGPT to understand who you are, what you do, the customer, the audience, their concerns. And I give some exercises in the episode to actually allow people to create these attribute sets, these data sets. But if you load it and prep ChatGPT, then the ability for you to utilize your own experiences and answers, thoughts, questions, and advice in a scalable way will give you a library of resources that will allow you to be found, to be valuable, to execute the framework of the Ask You Answer, whether it's assignment selling or whether it's delivering information quickly or whether it's just being found. Creating trust means really sharing information that people find valuable and meaningful to them to help them make a decision, whether it's working with you or not. So, the answer that I would give you in summary is the ChatGPT principle that I outline in episode 10, along with They Ask You Answers framework, is a powerful way to really create some effective resources in a scalable manner that will allow you to talk better than anyone else is doing it, to have as much information out there as possible to allow folks to make the decision to do business with you.
Awesome. That's a really powerful way to wrap this up. Now, as the last questions that I always ask people is, what is a book that you read in the last 6 to 12 months that has really changed your life?
Hmm. Yeah, so I really like the Celestine Prophecy, Hannah. I think I read it probably once a year, probably every 18 months. And it just helps me connect to the bigger premise that the world is connected, coincidences matter, and keeping your antennas up for things that happen around you can have value to your life. So the Celestine Prophecy is something that I come back to time and again.
Sales Team Prophecy. That is a new one. I have not come across that one, so thank you for that tip. I will certainly A, add it to the show notes, and B, check it out myself. With that, I am super grateful for the insights that you shared, and I can't wait for this to go live. I'm just happy that we had this conversation. Thank you so much.
It's always good to talk to you. Always good to spend time with you, Hannah. And thank you for having me on and continue to do great work. I've been again following this. I'm so psyched that you were that I was your first guest or you were my whoever that was, right? Your first guest on a podcast was on my show. I appreciate
Yeah.
that very much. It means a lot to me. And thank you again for having me. It was fun. I enjoyed it.